Hey everyone, welcome back to Public's Eye Outdoors. I'm getting ready to do some arrow builds here, and just wanted to kind of go over some of my thought process on how I build things, and just give you a quick insight on some of the things you might want to pay attention to, or some ideas that you hadn't thought about in your builds, if that's something that you're getting into, or you might even be seasoned at it. But anyway, I've got a couple dozen here that I'm putting together. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is trying to get these arrows as matched as I possibly can as far as weight. Some guys, it doesn't really bother. If you're one of those guys that is basically just doing tree stand hunts, then it's probably not a big deal. But if you're going out west and you're mule deer hunting, antelope hunting, or even at some points elk hunting, where you may have to take a little bit longer shot, it is pretty critical to have those arrows all matching and flying as evenly as possible. What I do is try to get my weights as close as I possibly can. Now, the arrow that I used 3 years ago when I started doing this process, this was a gold tip Hunter XT 300 spine. This first build that I really tried to really emphasize building the perfect arrow. This arrow was a 510 grain arrow. Okay, so that is with your field tip, not just the build it's by itself. You got that includes your field tip weight. So with that 100 grain field tip, this came out to 510 grains, which is a really nice weight for an arrow if you're hunting tree stands or something that you're not really worried about long distance, or even out to 50, 60, something like that. Even then, I've shot deer with this at 70 yards. So the nice thing about the heavier arrows is that they tend to have a little bit more truer flight to them, and they're a lot quieter coming out of the bow. That is two of the main pluses to having a heavier arrow, plus the knockdown power behind it. This build was basically made for the weight factor, and the knockdown power worked very well. However, when I went out antelope hunting, it was just way too heavy. So I needed something a little faster, and I ended up going to a micro diameter arrow at that point, which was a very good arrow, but I got tired of changing out components or replacing components every time I was shooting into a target and lose the insert or the sleeves. And then you just had extra stuff on there that you really had to worry about with those micro diameters, and I just kind of turned off of the micros. After I went from the micro diameter, then I went back just recently, at the end of last year to the beginning of this year, to just out of the box arrow. Again, I went back to the Hunter XTs and kept everything the same basically, but this out of the box with a 100 grain field tip came in at about 411. Okay, so pretty light. I know a lot of guys would even shoot like a 3 something, but that is really, really light, and in my opinion, you're going to be taking a big chance on not finding your animals with an arrow that light. I can almost guarantee it. It's basically like shooting a deer with a 22 compared to a 270. That's kind of where I look at my arrow weights. So this being with the field tip, this being 411, this one being 510, both of these in the right situation will work. However, I want to be somewhere in the middle of these two. I needed something in between there. This right here is a 50 grain aluminum insert, so it's much longer. That is a 50 grain insert, which I am going to be using in these arrows. So one of the things that I said at the beginning here was that I try to match my weights as much as possible. So when I do my builds, basically I'm weighing out all my components. The shafts, the nocks, the inserts, the flights, everything that's going to be going into that arrow, I weigh. And what that does is that gives me the opportunity to match all of my arrows and get them within 1 or 2 grains of each other. So if I weigh my shafts out and I put them lightest to heaviest, whatever, and then I mark those all out and I lay them here on the table or on the side of the wall, and I put a tag here that says, okay, with everything except for the flights and the field tip in there, this one weighs 323 grains. So I've got about what, 8 arrows here that have that grain ratio. Then I keep going. I try to match these heaviest to lightest, lightest to heaviest with all the different components to where I get all 2 dozen of these arrows within 1 or 2 grain of each other as far as weight goes. So these shafts here are 323, these shafts here are 324. So basically out of those 2 dozen arrows, I have 2 arrows right here that are below that ratio that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to set those to the side and not worry about them right now. Those will be like a practice arrow or whatever. So I'm within 1 grain of basically 2 dozen arrows here. Once I get to that point where I have all my arrows with the nock and the insert in that weight range, then I go and I sort out all my flights. So here you'll see a pile of flights there, a pile of flights here, and a pile of flights there. So 6.4, 6.6, 6.8. I'm trying to get these as close as I possibly can. So I've got to take these and separate them out from heaviest to lightest. You'll get quite a few that are all matched pretty well. Blazer vanes come pretty well weighted out. You will have some stragglers here that will jump up, but other than that, what I do is I will take this shaft with the insert and the nock and basically weigh that out. So I'm at 324. This is one of my 324 shafts. So I'm going to go to my lightest flights, which I'm only going to do 3, 2 whites, and then my nock flight will be yellow. And I'll throw that on there. So that puts me up to 343 without my field tip or broadhead, which will be another 100 grains. So I'm in that 442 to 443 grain arrow. So that's perfect. That's what I'm looking for. Something in between that really heavy arrow and that really light arrow. So I'm shooting with my field tip. If I throw the field tip in there too, 443.8. So the 0.8, 0.6, 0.3, 0.2, that's not really a big deal right there, but I want that 443 to be across the board if I can. And that's why I weigh these all out so I can distribute them as far as these shafts are concerned. So that's one of the things that I do when I'm building. And all this is really doing is giving me that peace of mind that all my arrows are pretty much matched. Okay, it's no different than a guy that builds his own bullets, for his gun. He wants his bullets to match in weight and grains of powder and all that as consistently and as closely as he possibly can. And it's no different here in this situation. That's basically what I'm doing. I just got a bigger, longer bullet. So if you put it in that kind of perspective, it makes sense. On top of the 50 grain insert that we're going to, we're also changing out the factory nock to this is what they call an Acu Light nock, I believe, from Gold Tip. It's quite a smaller profile nock than your factory ones. The factory ones here weigh about 12.8 grains. The Acu Light nocks are 8.9, I believe. So they're close to about half of that in grain weight. That's basically going to be my build in a nutshell. I'll just put these together as normally and just go from there. But I try to keep my arrows as simple as possible. I used to put wraps on them and try to make them all look nice and everything, but you know, that's just, for me, it's not really a necessity, because that's, if one of these gets tore off, then I've got to replace everything on here. If one of these gets torn off without a wrap, all I do is replace that one and I'm good to go. So if you're, you know, if you're target shooting or 3D shooting and you want that arrow to look really fancy and nice, hey, by all means, go for it. But in this hunting situation, I just don't find that to be a necessity. So that's why I don't use wraps or any of the fancy stuff on my arrows. Just wanted to put that out there for you in a little short, quick video here, and that'll be my build this year. We'll have that 444 grain arrow. We're going to put these up against the other ones that I've shot in the past and just kind of compare my energy going into the target and see how much penetration we can get from the 510 grain to the 44 grain to the 411 grain, and see just what that grain difference makes as far as penetration. I think we'll probably be pretty surprised, and that's really the key when it comes to hunting, is having an arrow that's going to penetrate and get the job done for you. You know, if I take, for example, the arrow that I shot this year at the beginning of the year for turkey, and that first turkey that I got, if you go back, you can watch that video. First turkey I shot was with this factory arrow. The only thing that I did differently to this arrow was put a GTO knock and bushing on it, because I had a smaller knock system on my D-loop for that micro diameter shaft. So I had to match that basically, so that's what I had, some of these left over, and that's what I put on there. But other than that, this is just out of the box factory arrow. And when I shot that turkey at 35 yards, I shot him frontal, and it went in probably halfway, and he ran off with that arrow stuck in him. But once he went into trees and stuff, he ended up shoving that arrow through his whole body when I found him. So that's just basically a perfect scenario of why you want that knockdown power. Now, if I would have shot that turkey with this 510 grain arrow, I guarantee you he would have done a backflip and he would have been shaking on the ground. He wouldn't have got back up. This 510 grain arrow would have blew through him like butter. Just something to keep in mind. So if you want to keep your speed up and you want to have that energy to have that knockdown power, you want to keep that weight up in that 440 to 460. I would say would be a really good weight for speed and knockdown power. I think anything heavier than that, you're going to be losing a little bit of speed. Anything lighter than that, you're going to have a lot of speed, but you're not going to have that knockdown power. So if you can get your arrows inside that framework of 440 to 460, maybe even that 470, if you're not too worried about shooting distances, I think this is going to be the perfect build. So anyway, that's what I've got for you. If this is helpful, let me know in the comments. If you got other suggestions or ideas, you can leave those in the comments. Otherwise, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. And to all those that have kept following me, thank you very much. And welcome to those that are new subscribers. So anyway, we appreciate everybody out there. Stay safe out in your hunts, and we will see you on the next video.